right, here we are. Much cool. So here, I guess I'll wait. Kristen, you're not joined in yet, right? Yeah. Oh, you can see. Okay, because your camera's gray. But sounds good. All right. Cool. So here is where CJ and I started. Basically, CJ and I had a call with another person who's like in some sort of Bitcoin energy data center stuff. We're just like, we had a call. We were like, oh my God, this was a lot. Like, how are we even talking about this without like having good notes? And so that segued nicely into, well, we have this mind space. And we started here, sort of trying to lay out like the three layers that are all somewhat connected. So we have, our client, which is also our API for now, because they're both kind of being served by Vercel. We're also going to be doing a lot of, overlap on the API functions and the client, like getter functions. Those are just two sides of the same coin. This for now is going to run, on people's devices. This is going to be on Vercel, but over time that kind of breaks out too into something more distributed. MetaMask only ties into the client, so that kind of simplifies our like auth connection there. And then for now, this being pushed to GitHub, but obviously that like goes to IPFS later. So once we had that, we started thinking a little bit more about like what, really going into the user flow that at some point Dave, I think, had a little bit of a thing laid out, but so we copied that and sort of expanded it with some actual numbering. And so, we go to this thing, we pull down this like sort of progressive web app, like full packaged thingamajigger. In there, we have the ability to connect to an Ethereum wallet. So that connection goes off and hits MetaMask, through MetaMask to whatever we need. Now we have a local state that says we are authenticated. So imagine that a lot of these components would just accept a prop that allows it to render itself slightly differently if we are authenticated versus not authenticated. And where we really left off and kind of ran into a little bit of like abstraction problems is the blocks API. So we need a way of fetching these blocks, and from home, like we don't actually know. We only know who we are as the person that has the Ethereum address, and that's about it. So to even try to like search blocks, we can get all, but then that's not very helpful. So we figured specifying by filtering by all of the fields on the schema. So being able to say type picture or date time posted between X and Y, or creator is one of XYZ. Those would be some pretty simple query things that we just pass to /API/block/get, something like that. Result type, this is where we were sort of thinking out, are we returning IDs? Are we returning the content of the blocks or just metadata? And would it be helpful to specify all of those things? And the reason we went down this whole rabbit hole is because, like, say I want to know how many posts Dave has, but I don't necessarily want to pull down all of his content yet. I just want to get enough metadata on how to render those things and how to tell the user that there are X number of results. So we thought maybe there's a space here for like a lightweight query, meta query thing that says, okay, just give me the number of results back for this query and maybe some other information to tell me about how to render all that stuff correctly without confusing the hell out of everybody and without downloading tons of content that we don't need to. And this kind of works well because all of the heavy content will be on IPFS. And so to some extent, all of our primary block data and content data, besides the long text posts, I guess, will be relatively light on actual like bandwidth and disk size usage. So this is kind of where Dave and I connected, because that's as far as CJ and I got. And then CJ was like pretty much out and about like all weekend. And that's where Dave and I started talking a little bit more about the data layer here. And we kind of connected, but there's a couple open channels of conversation, I guess. And it's, this might be a good time to kind of try and see where those all overlap and where we are in relation to a more defined technical spec, because it feels like what I would love to do at like any moment right now. And this is what CJ and I tried to do, is kind of get a design doc going. There's like one semi-complete like map of what we're going to be doing and how those, and then from there we could generally figure out who wants to do what, and here's what we can intersect on. But I think before we get there, it feels like there's a few more questions to answer really about how this data moves around, how we're going to be displaying it, how we're querying it. Yeah, and I think also how we talk about this better, which is kind of it feels like we're starting to hit like bandwidth limitations over calls. There's a lot we can discuss this way, but for some of these more deep like points around libraries and interactions, it's something like a email thread / forum thing that happens more or less asynchronously, maybe more suitable for us to make decisions through, and then kind of sync the rest of the group back up so that like CJ, Shahruz, and I can go really deep on some branch, but then without having to like wait for a synchronous meeting and kind of have like decisions bubble up that way. Yeah, I think that's roughly the stage right now.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I think having another communication method, like, how do you think, like, do you have like a proposal for how you, like, either you or Shahruz have done this in the past, or like how do you think about that stuff?
This is all new to me.
Okay.
This method, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Been a part of a lot of Discords and Slacks. Never liked either, but they,
yeah,
they're close to what we're talking about. GitHub Issues has a nice communication flow for some scoped stuff. It like resolves, and you have you can even tie it to specific code blocks and PRs and stuff, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
There's something
about for design decisions like how to format that API specifically.
Yeah.
So you were talking, John, about like email. Yeah, I'm curious how that like actually just shakes out in your mind, like
it's
what the operational version is.
Yeah, like when we use it, it's very much like Slack but quieter. So longer thought out responses, but you're not really waiting as long like as a forum, because there's that push. There's a little more of that. Okay, there's the conversation has moved on. I can like catch up. Whereas in our current forum model, like it would be hard to get that part of it.
I mean, all this makes sense to me. It's just like I would have to see it. I've never done anything. I guess, never anything that was distributed like this that had like a. I don't think anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Cool. I don't. Whatever.
Are there potentially different buckets to put things into in terms of like types of problems that we might run into? Like for example, if there's a bug in something that's live, GitHub Issues seems like an obvious kind of approach for that. It can track that bug still exists. We can talk about what the bug is and propose a fix. However, like I said, a design decision on like an API thing, that's more upfront. So it's like a different bucket, and certain buckets might work best in different forms. Like pair programming might be the right way to do the design stuff, and then just if we do something wrong, then we just fix it on the next iteration. Stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe there's some broad buckets to think about in terms of what problems we think we might anticipate, or context for conversation. But yeah.
No, that's a good way of thinking about it. Like you're basically turfing it to the like communication medium, like that's relevant to the bucket. So in this case, like, you and John are going to work some design decision or whatever synchronously over whatever, and you can record it or not, or, record it in email, versus something else that's maybe like a longer term, like strategy thing or something like that can be communicated. It's just side chains, I guess, of communication. But with like availability, if anybody wants to follow along, I suppose that's the sort of, yeah. I mean, this is what we're talking about here is like a fractal of what we're trying to build communication wise. Like, what's the sort of main channel, if that's even a way of thinking about it, of information around the project? And then what are the side channels of development that are maybe more, I don't know, technical or specific, you know, and like they're available for, you know, anybody to sort of pop in. But yeah, they may be in a language that is like very particular to a stratum. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, all that makes sense.
There's also a nice split, Shahruz, between your two buckets, which is kind of reactionary, like things that have happened and we need to address them because they didn't exist before, and you know, future projected things that may, you know, we can work towards, and how do we get there? Because those do feel like very sort of different types of conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there some notion for like what you said about I don't know how to phrase the question. Is the current calendar system the right approach for something like that, or should there be more of a sense of like, here's a shared calendar to put events on for, like, we're going to try and tackle this problem synchronously at this time, and here's a Zoom link, anybody can join at that time if they want. I don't know how different that is from right now, but I guess just the difference of having one central repository instead of invites.
I think a shared calendar is a very nice, yeah, at least like one surface to sort of coordinate on. At the very least, like things that are there are kind of like open invite, just if you're around, but no.
Yeah, Kristen has been sort of negotiating most of this stuff. Yeah, I don't know what you're thinking about that, Kristen.
I mean, having a shared calendar works fine. It's easier.
Yeah. Okay, so it's more the.
And we're using our Zoom account, and if we need to keep using that, that's fine, as long as, I mean, and then if you have a shared calendar, you can't schedule at the same time, which is good. Yeah, I don't know if there's any reason to have different URLs, but that's easy, like, to set up. I can set up recurring invites, but we could just use the same URL, which I have been doing. That all seems easy. So there seems like there's a few things going on. So there's scheduling, shared calendar seems to make the most sense. And then general communications, where there's like one main place that's not Telegram, is sort of what I'm hearing. No one said that, but we've sort of had some sidebar chats about that.
Yeah, it's like we're approaching I think the productive the top end of being able to coordinate in Telegram.
Yeah,
unless we start breaking out more conversations, but then that's going to get like, even there was a few days ago and Kristen's just like, where is that link? And I'm like, I don't know. We have like 5 overlapping Telegram groups at this point. There's one of them, like, it's getting difficult.
So,
and then on top of that, there's like the specific, like, what's the protocol for building together? And then, like, that's what Shahruz is bucketing, where you can sort of say, in this scenario we do this, in this scenario we do that. But even then, like, there's probably little conversations that can happen asynchronously about what is this, like, specific task fall under, how do we want to tackle it, which would go in the general comms thing. And who was it, John? You said you don't like Discord or Slack, or it's just at this point it's so ubiquitous that it's just like.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't like them because they're just like really big tools, but I think we can make Discord work. Like, especially given that we're not mixing like random people from the internet in yet, and then, you know, we can have like pretty clear norms about what what is a channel and what is at everyone versus at person. Like, just, we can work that stuff out. I just don't think that Discord is the long-term thing. I think we're essentially only should only be on there for as long as we can, like, build the thing that lets us get off of it.
Yeah.
And really maintain that as a North Star of sorts.
Yeah, any place that we could. Yeah, I mean, ideally we're using this thing as an interface to communicate the building of the thing. And I don't know how crunchy that is, how much that slows us down in the short run, like what the minimums we need to hit that. Like, and maybe we just pick out pieces of this, like communication web, and sort of go after them as low-hanging fruit to start moving things, like starting to use the, whatever this is, like the buzzard honeycombs interface, as like, yeah, that sort of cues up how I've been thinking about what to design and how it's oriented, publishing versus communications versus, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I'm just sort of mapping out loud.
That's great. I love the idea of being able to start doing the whole like dog food product development process as soon as possible.
Okay, we're all in agreement on that thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we were talking about before, I guess I can we can talk through some of the interface stuff and then maybe it'll ping back into this. I'm not really sure. Should I share?
So we're gonna do shared calendar, Discord, and that's as far as we got on that for now.
I think so.
Okay.
And GitHub issues for like more technical back and forth forum type stuff, and then Discord and Slack, I guess, are for the more back and forth. I think probably just keep email out of it because we could probably replicate what we need with GitHub issues without pulling an email. And I think people can use GitHub issues through email if they want. So there's still an on-ramp for that.
Yeah. I think we lost Dave, but should be back. Yeah, the overhead that I have with like Slack and Discord is so much less than I have with email, because the relationship with email has been longer standing, and
Definitely.
It's like sort of been like the place where you like work comms come through. So, and like people need something and I'm just like, I don't want to open it sometimes.
Very much same. So yeah, if we want to keep that surface out, it's fine by me.
Alrighty. Yeah, I don't know how to do this. We'll jump around and see what's what. Okay, so you can start from the sort of, there's a few layers. There's the layer of getting blocks into the system, right? Just generally through a text interface. And this screen, which can be full screen or not, or whatever, it's the edit sort of, I don't know how to do slightly less than 100%. Anyways, yeah, so the input style of the blocks is something that I'm thinking about, like how you get them in there, at what speed, and then currently I have like, this thing was designed around the idea that you do a bunch of blocks and then you post it, you submit it to something, and then it would go to a stream, right? Which is available to somebody other than you. Or we had a draft system too that, would effectively put it in a private bucket. Those models are not necessary. They're just available. Like we did it because of the sort of pipeline of publishing, which was, you pop one of these things open, you make a new one, and then it goes to a stream like this, and then the other people who have access to this stream can see it. And then we were figuring out like one extra step, which is like publishing it to like make it private or public. There's an outside world view, which we've started sort of poking around. That's one of the questions, like when you come to buzzard.life, what is on the home screen, right? If you are connected to it versus not. If you are connected and you have like write access or whatever, like is it just a big editable surface? Like everything is editable and markupable, and like you can come here and be like, I want to start a post off of this and do something with it, or are there response things in play? Like I don't know how to think about that yet. So that's one layer, and then is the whole thing like kind of this style where you can click into anything and edit it and connect it to something else? How does that work? And then if you're not logged in, like if there is an outside view of the thing that like the general public, anybody who comes to buzzard.life can see, and what is the relationship between those two layers, right? Is there a layer of pipeline to move things out of that? Do we need to think about that at all right now? Like the longer this thing doesn't have that layer, the more it is mute. So there is some drive to be able to push things out to the public so that we can share them and draw attention, so that the longer you hold off on that, the less likely you are to do it. So there's something to think about there. So I'm feeling attention in the UI from like finding some primitives to post in a group setting to communicate, right? That's the internal layer of the app. Whatever that stuff is, like simple posting, just like a text posts, obviously image posts or whatever are good. That gives us a basic tool set to communicate with each other. If there's stuff that's being piped in, like what you're consuming and doing that through Telegram or somewhere else, that's great. I don't know, we can talk about sort of all that. And then some simple external, like staticky site kind of thing or whatever. Yeah, so that's the broad structure of the thing, and as I kind of see it, but and this is tapping into some of the conversations Kristen and I have had and some of the conversations John and I have, but they're like really loose. We're just sort of mapping territory on like, it's not Slack where you're in the thing and it's chatting and yeah, you're being notified all the fucking time and no. Like yeah, and Discord is a little bit better version of that where you've got audio channels and stuff, but you're generally like co-present. But that doesn't mean it can't be. It can have like little pockets of that if necessary. But I think for now it's more async. It's more like blogging. Like that's the cadence. I think that is interesting. And then quite blogging,
thoughtful tweeting.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
I think the thing that you're pointing at is the privacy, like at what level does privacy happen and how do we think about it? Because the rest of it we can work out, like cadence and like what it is, but who can see what like that? So I think that's the conversation, right?
Sure.
Or does that not feel like that's, I'm trying to.
It's definitely in here. Like we have the ability to work sort of anonymously right now because nobody knows that this exists. So like if we were to build a first layer, which is just, anybody who has access to the thing can post to the thing, right? Like, and you can see it externally. Yeah, I don't know how to think about that. Yeah, like, I don't know if there is a technical seam here that may, like, if you need access to the React app and we're going to put all this stuff in a React app, or that's a way to think about it. Like, there's a big editing surface, and only if you like have credentials or whatever can you get into the editing surface. And if you don't, then you just see the outside site. If that, or if I'm oversimplifying this, or I don't know. So this is where I, yeah, thoughts.
I mean, everything you said is possible technically. So I think it's just a matter of deciding what to try out first, at least.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'm just looking for natural frictions is what I'm, so I guess if we're, go ahead.
Here's a question. What would we want to post that we wouldn't want other people to see? Just like use case wise, like when would we, like a small group, us being us, like we don't want anyone to see, but we want to use this.
That's a very, nice place to start, because it's like, instead of trying to define all the other things, we just define a small set of things that we don't need in there. The first thing that comes to mind is like communications within about the outside, like outside interactions, partnerships, like any sort of, somebody emails, hey, at buzzard.life, like, that conversation should essentially probably be like shielded, at least for some time, until all the participants in that interaction feel like they can keep everything open, and then I feel like it could like open up, and then probably just be part of the main communication layer or something. But like it's sort of like apart until that point.
Yeah, it's sort of orienting to new information. Sometimes that can be done in public, but yeah, when it's related to strategic stuff, for sure. We had talked about like having this thing be a surface, like the sort of the style in which we're operating is a kind of journal model, where you're like, here's an aspirational surface is basically like, you come in and just do all your thinking into the, like, something, some text inputter, image inputter, video inputter thing. And some of that stuff is basically for your own edification to look up later, or if it's primordial thoughts, or it's like part of some personal understanding. And maybe that stuff doesn't belong in here at all. But thinking about that as the starting point for stuff that gets pipelined into the larger group and then into the larger sphere. So just the ability to think privately in the system and then move that stuff into a broader sphere of trust. That may be something that we work towards, but yeah.
Yeah, I like that kind of, it's myself, and then I feel a little more confident about it. I'm gonna like push it out to those closest to me, and if they like it too, then and it somehow helps them create more or orient towards it or just respond to it, and then whatever that is then like gets pushed out all the way. So that also makes me think there's maybe like threads that start more closed, like explicitly, kind of like these maybe per channel, per something, per conversation, where it's like this sort of stays between all of us until we're all like able to, or there's some explicit action where we all just like toggle it on, like shareable, or like kind of like this idea of merging it into that open wider web. And I think there are multiple flows here. There's like flows where this happens more automatically just because it's been 3 months and everything has been resolved, and okay, this is kind of, it's like no longer on fire, and it just, kind of naturally squeaks in, or it could be a little more towards this, okay, we all feel like this is nearing some sort of state of completion. We all sort of agree, now let's, push it out. Just, yeah, kind of feeling how streams of information can like move through those layers out.
Yeah, I think that.
So there's a thing here too. I'm curious. I'm thinking about if there's other groups on the system. So is it just a toggle on and off where it's private to your group and then public to everyone, or is it private to your group, whoever the group is, and group could be one, it's just you as a person, or group as in like a squad, but then you don't want to share it with everyone, you want to share it with another squad who are also somehow identified, like, not to complicate it more, but I'm just trying to tap into what are the levels of sharing and like who you're sharing with.
I guess you could have the fully private, and then the in-between thing could maybe be a whitelist of addresses, whether they're individuals or other groups. And then the third tier would be fully public.
Yeah, we're getting into like sort of, this is the CRM kind of thing that John was talking about, using Roam for it, like, so sort of contact book kind of thing, social graphy kind of deal. And then if you have recently or previously interacted with parties, there's some store of those things somewhere and you can add them, or yeah, and that's pretty easy to maintain. Yeah. So some version of that needs to exist in the system, I guess.
Yeah. If you do like the whitelist approved, that's sort of just like an in between space, and then we can figure out exactly what we want to do with that. But
yeah,
it doesn't have to be specified up front. But if you know you need fully private, fully public, and an in between, my sense, I don't know, the builders can, it sounds like that would work though.
I think so.
Okay.
It covers us. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, so it's pipeline then. Back to that, like, we have the sort of entities for which you can share with. It's just how you get it into the system, and then what everybody is seeing within the local trust group, and then the sort of broader trust group. So we can start with the local trust group. I mean, so do you have there are different sort of pockets in the view space. So there's probably some concept of an individual view, which may be premature, but we can sort of set it as like you are coming into this thing, and you are connected in a squad of some sort that you're doing. Like, let's keep it to one for now, but you can probably have lots of them. And there's activity within that sphere. And John and I talked about the sort of concept of rather than alerting you to new things that you need to deal with, there is a notification system that sort of reminds you to be curious about the things you care about. So like here's some stuff, like go poke around in it or something. I don't know what those mechanisms particularly are. I think that it's just it's a nice ethos. Like when you sign into this thing, there should be stuff that tickles your fancy, and like stuff that you've been working on before potentially. Okay, so that gives us an environment that like there is some information that is localized to me, like, here's some things that I've been at reply, stuff like that. And then there's broader context in terms of the scheduling stuff, which may just live in a shared calendar for now. This is, and then like sort of generalized posts about, I don't know, this is shared, whatever that kind of stuff is, like, and we have to sort of social norm that stuff. You know, is the norm that we like go and look at each other's streams, right? Like there's something like that, or is there a type of post that we share in a mainstream, right? If streams are the way to think about this at all, right? Like we're trying to sort of model, like the feed interface is pretty gravitationally strong. I don't know that there is another model that we can use in the short term, but you know, yeah, there's some stuff. I don't know if that moves us forward any.
Yeah, this feels very, very close to queries. You know, like the sort of this idea of how are we requesting all of this information and displaying it, and quite often, you know, I'm imagining these views as queries. So I would have a query that feels something like, show me all the recent thoughts by the Buzzard Squad, and just some ability to basically save my state in that, so I can sort of know. Just looking at it shouldn't like change its state, but I could maybe mark something as like seen, seen, seen. So I can kind of keep track of like what's new and what's not. And this is where it does become like important not to make it this like infinitely overfilling inbox, because that's terrifying. But allowing me to say, I want all the things that other people around me are interacting with to be placed on one axis for now, so that I can like understand which parts of that axis I have covered and which parts I have not covered, and then, you know, resolve that delta.
Yeah, it's hard to know what the upper and lower bounds on like content coming into the system until we just sort of give ourselves a dumping ground and run into them.
Do we need to solve this one now?
No.
Because I think the view thing, like if there's, because at a baseline, it can just be a mainstream, right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to get uncomfortable quickly, because people are going to be like, I mean, we're experiencing it now where you're like, I don't know where anything is on the blog, and it's a mess, and you know, what do we do? But hopefully going through the act of it, the dog fooding, we'll be like, all right, we got to change this somehow.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're still hovering around the same kind of thing where we've got like
I think so.
Just a general feed that we're all posting to, like using the editor, right? And it's this same concept. Like you hit plus, it pops open a thing, you can write one. Yeah, this whole thing's in a app, I guess. And then it comes in here, and then you can go to alter pages to see. I mean, this gives us what we had in 11T. Yeah, what we want to do with the actual, what I'm calling sifting, because it's just a little different than filtering and querying and whatever. I like the idea that there's a big pile of stuff and you're sifting out the good stuff. But so yeah, does that come up now? Like, do we add any of that stuff? Like, is the system working by creating a sift of all, you know, and that gives us the blog? I don't know how to think about that stuff. Like, I mean, that's where you were poking in with CJ, John, it seemed like.
Yeah, and one place that we landed, and one thing that like gave us a roadblock, is how do you list all authors? Like, how do we run that query relative to what and from which point? And so one method I see, and this is by far not the only one, but like, show me the authors that are involved in the squad I'm part of, and list all of their blocks / posts, you know, and that very much does come to something like this view right here, which is, yeah, maybe one could be show me the authors, and then the other one could be show me all the posts by those authors. And we pretty much.
And then that scopes it. So yeah, walk me through that again. Like, Yeah, how do you, because you could just have this this thing view whatever you're a part of, and then however that handshake of being you know, like how you define
Yeah.
the group. Yeah, so
So
we're gonna manually
actually,
do that for now.
yeah, I guess one thing I haven't really thought about is, yes, how does my Ethereum address map to all of yours? Where does
Yeah.
that association live? And how do I query it?
We didn't talk about group schemas.
No, I'm realizing now that that's maybe where some of these answers lie.
Hey,
Okay, okay. So block group game schema, yeah, or and potentially something that's right in the middle of all of those. Mhm.
yeah, so what, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick, kind of going back on the privacy thing, and then also a little bit on the squad thing or the group thing. If for now everything's going into the GitHub, then it just seems like some of these problems are going to be better solved in the more like later on thing of how does this, how does privacy work on the blockchain on an IPFS?
Yeah.
Is it going to have to be privacy through obscurity? Is it going to be other mechanisms? So some of these things we might end up solving twice if we try to do them now too, just because the technical
Yep.
implementation in the longer term might just be different.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, I mean, we can assume for now we've got buzzard and that's it. Like, yeah, and then, so the author thing, how does that work? Like, so like, how would it work to like go to say Kristen's, like page or whatever?
So the default when you connect a wallet,
Mm,
the front end of the app will get that wallet's address. So just a long 0x ugly
yep.
character mishmash.
Yep.
And then if you have an ENS domain, what you can program the site to do automatically is a reverse lookup. So it'll look that address that you logged in with that's ugly and then says, if this has a reverse ENS thing, that might
Yep.
be like Shahruz.eth, display
Yep.
that instead. So that's how Web3 usernames are kind of like being conventionalized is through
Got it.
ENS reverse domains.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in the sifting case, to get, you just look up by address then? Is that?
You could look up by address. I think you could also look up by usernames. We would just need to index that separately somewhere.
Got it. Okay.
So with a lot of this stuff, there's I'm running into this with the camera stuff. There's a thing called the graph. I think it's thegraph.com. But it's basically a decentralized way of doing better database indexing and making things easier to query for things that are inherently on the blockchain. So instead of
That
us
sounds
running our own
relevant.
database, they just handle it and like they're listening to events on the blockchain and then updating their own instances whenever that happens. So something like that could theoretically be used here where like if we detect that a new post from Kristen has been posted, that emits an event on the blockchain, which includes Kristen's ENS username so that the graph grabs it and then we can query the graph with like a full text search and it'll pull open anything that starts with KRI. It can go and find Kristen's post that way. So there's a couple like systems in place that might be useful for that in the longer term.
Okay. So yeah, I think that we're still in the same boat we were last time. Like we just need to get the primitives on the page and then start like throwing queries and stuff at this to see like what the output looks like and then just start putting those in interfaces. Because I need to feel the canvas of the thing. Otherwise, we're just going to abstract these things forever. Yeah, so the basic functionality of the blocks, like I think I'm trying to figure out like how to get posts in the stream, like what we want the posts to have as features, right? Like so, and I don't know where the best place to start. If like in this interface, we talked about Yeah, so yeah, to basically like adding text is straightforward, like, you know, type, hit enter, it's submitted as a block. Then we have like links, which is everything, which we sort of landed on. And I guess you just toss in a hyperlink URL, and then it spits out whatever. Yeah, does that make sense? And then we have sort of viewers that like, how does that work? Like,
So with URLs, if our default block type is text, then if we sent
yeah,
a URL in that, it wouldn't know that it's a URL. So
yeah,
we do need to specify that somehow. You could
got
basically
it.
also auto assume it so that if AG
Mm,
there becomes a link, then maybe like a little separate button gets activated that's like post type now becomes URL
mm,
instead of post. And since all of our viewers know that this block type is a URL, it'll now know to treat it as a web address and then pull in a preview, a link preview, or make it like a big button as opposed to just the URL
mm.
text.
Yeah, I think we'll just go through implementing that and see what the pattern's like, and like what affordances we need or want or anything on that. Okay, that one's fine. We'll run into it when we run into it. Then sort of the media upload thing. I have this drop zone or whatever that, like, there's plenty of the stuff that can give you a big sniffable drop zone, or like right now, I mean, I assume you're uploading a photo, you're uploading something. I mean, I don't know how we want to handle all that.
Yeah, so two thoughts there. One is that I think most of this, or at least a lot of the files I'd be uploading are from mobile. So in that case,
Yeah.
it's more of that explicit button.
Yep,
And the
yep.
other thought is when I'm uploading a picture or a series of pictures, sometimes I want to add text to it and still tie it to those pictures. So kind of like there's a couple ways I see of doing that, literally have them kind of appear in the message compose window. And then like now, this is how Messenger and Telegram do it, I think, or no, iMessage, where, you have photos queued, but you haven't set them yet. And then you're adding text to that. But I don't know if that's the best model. I kind of like this idea that I could just send a caption later and still make it a caption to any image, and a nested like multi-level caption if it needs to be. I could just essentially send another block of information and then associate it with the image, which feels a little more long-term stable.
Okay, so there are two paths there. Like, this is where we're getting into the like context menu stuff.
I think that could also be an interesting solution for the URL, like post specification thing, of like if the primary flow is that text box is just like quick flow, just dump stuff in. But then editing the blocks up front or above is just like really quick and snappy. And if you can see that, oh, my URL got pasted as text, let me quickly change the post type. Now it's an embed, great. Click save, and then keep posting or whatever. But I could see that flow of like quick input and then kind of gardening to like clean things up and polish them in the stuff right above.
Yeah, so it's down to what these little things are, what our initial dammits commands are going to be. Yeah, so like the Notion style post type, how did they do theirs? Like, you can switch the post type and then
right click convert to, I think is the way they do it. And you could have hyperlinks within text, or a whole block can be an embedded link. Maybe another mode, but
okay. Yeah, we need to figure out like what our sort of mentality around that is. I don't have a like strong opinion on it. I guess we can just get it exposed and then see what it feels like. It can just be a drop down or whatever now, or however we want to input it. Okay. Yeah, so this is where like duplicate and hide and all of these other things were in there. I don't know what we want for this. We can have just delete for now. We can, because there's others like, you know, in the case that you were talking about where like you upload an image and then create another block to create it to make that a caption, then you have to link those somehow. You're creating a relationship there. Or there's the implicit, like every image that comes into the system has a caption block associated with it, and it's just stylistically connected somehow. But yeah, data-wise, that's the same thing. So how do we want to handle? Do we want to play with that now, or do we want to come hit that later?
I think it would be safe to just say we have images and we have blocks and they're going to be in order, but we're not making like a hard stance on what's a caption, what's not yet.
Got it.
I do think that there's, yeah, because like, is a caption metadata and,
yeah,
or is it like a post within a post that just has one block image and one text block? Yeah, there's a couple routes. So maybe for now we just say, you know, if it looks like a caption, read it as a caption.
Yeah, I mean, these like decisions sort of come up, and especially like the publishing side of this, where you're trying to add like readable context to a bunch of information, and you want to be able to have things like captions. So versus annotation and that kind of stuff, which is, yeah, there's like, you know, the publishing journalistic standards, which are, there's usually one caption with the thing, because that's the room that you've got for it. And if you add too much of that, but here we're starting to talk about multi-perspectival, like sort of input.
5 people want to caption it, and they're all going to caption it differently. And I want to see all different captions.
Yeah. And then that
might
layer,
be like a branching thing too, like a block branching thing. Because if we have that parent relationship in our schema that identifies like, here's the block that this block was based on, and it could be from a different author or different creator rather, then theoretically you could use that in reverse and have some UI for like, all right, this book cover here, it exists in 5 different blocks, each one with a different caption. And then it's a UI problem of, do you want to show those all in the same view? Do you want it to be a click and navigate thing? Something in between, something else entirely? Okay,
yeah, that pattern's cool. Well, that'll be fun to run into. Okay, yeah. I mean, it is. So I'm having to like sort of just that's helpful. There's like a sort of, yeah, one piece many response thing. There's like a dimensionality to the content now that like is hard to hold on to. So okay, like here we don't need to duplicate or anything yet. We'll get there.
Yeah, I guess because every edit is in some sense a duplication.
Yeah. What else? We got drag and drop. Well, the whole thing will be drag and droppable. Fine for now.
Yeah.
Like
reorder things.
For now, I think just the y-axis is fine. Like above or below is all we need. Like we can start doing canvasy shit later. But yeah, do we want?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What does the green bar represent at the bottom? Is that like a limited post capacity kind of thing?
No, that was just an upload meter.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was wondering too. Yeah.
Needed to go somewhere, and like, yeah, I just hacked it in. So we can do that any way we like. But it made sense above the thing, because then it just fills in the block after it's uploaded. But based on, this is where we build the componentry and what the components know about their state and all this other stuff. Like we can start talking about that. That was a bit hard to get done in the last round. Yeah, sorry, what were you saying before?
If we zoom out a little bit here, just to get the top of the
Yep.
interface here, and this is essentially we're drafting a post, right? And
Yep.
we're essentially like queuing up a bunch of blocks that are associated to each other. At some
Yep.
point, presumably, we can right-click on one of those blocks and say this is context, and so treat it differently, which kind of acts a little bit as our guiding title for this post. So maybe it would usually be near the top, but it doesn't matter as long as it's specified somewhere in the stream of blocks. I think it's okay. It might need a little different styling just so you can like find it easily.
Yeah. Okay. So this probably, I was doing that with title. Yeah, we can do that.
I was going to ask what context,
How do we?
but now I remember the magic context.
Yeah.
Magical context.
I'm trying to think in here, like that's, how the hell does that work? So, because you only have one of them. And
so it's marked as context. It's not that anything can become context. It's more that you are taking context away from another block and adding it to this one. And the other one presumably just drops back into text mode.
Okay. So does it make sense to have like, since we're always going to have space for this thing, like have its own text area or something at the top, or are we just going to go with one input type for all things and then you mark it? Yeah, I think we keep the mark thing.
Yeah, feeling same, because I think some things won't have context or need for it at all, and other things are going to need it a lot. But the idea that I don't have to fill it out until I'm sure I need to fill it out kind of feels nice.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as little Chrome stuff we have, and we have one input for now, that keeps the interface simpler. So, okay. Yeah. So got context worked out. What else we got in this thing?
So what I'm wondering now is I've pasted in a bunch of text. I've added some context. I click post. It's kind of a magic button, but do I get back a URL or a query or something that I could then send to another person through a non-buzzered like medium, so say text message, that then lets them see this again, this set of data from their perspective? In other words, how do I
share it?
This post to somebody else? Yeah.
But you mentioned off the site.
They don't have to be off the site. It could be one of you all, so presumably with a way to connect and authenticate yourselves. Just more of like, is there a URL, or is the navigation back to that post not a URL at all? Because we, I don't think we'll have /post/5. They're like, who would be parsing that? So it's more like, how could I invite somebody to look at that again? And does me posting something give me that back, or is it implied as I'm posting it that if they were looking at that and refreshed, then it would appear something very like dynamic and I guess, yeah. So one side of this is like, I'm tuning into a channel and putting it there, and somebody else who's already tuned into that channel can see it. The other one is like, I'm submitting something and I get back an ID that I could then like send people and be like, here's that thing. Or maybe there's even more models here, but those are the ones I'm being pulled between.
Yeah, so this is down to the input model, right? So like whatever surface you're on, right? So say you're walking around, you have your phone out, something strikes you, you compose something and you send it, right? Like the likelihood is that's a note that you're just so it needs to go into the system somewhere, right? We're getting back into the routing of the the norms and stuff here, right? Like, does it go to your space, or does it go to all space? And that's our default right now. Everything goes into the main feed. So I just lost that. Warm me up again.
Yeah, no, I think you're well definitely right here that it does go to everybody.
So
I
you're
guess
trying,
my
okay, so the outside, the link thing. So yeah, that's right. So like, what is the path there? Like, is there, this is where like the thing's not going to a specific home or anything like this. Like, how do you find it again, right?
yeah, I think that's a better way to put
Okay,
it.
so there's a case where how I was handling this in Ponder was, you know, in a session that like, say you, for instance, can pop open a new thought anywhere, or we were calling them thought, a new post anywhere. Like, this is why this thing like sort of is set up as a modal. So you're on this page, and you're like, I want a new thing, and like, you know, you pop it up, and you produce it, and then it would pop open. Let me see. What the hell is it? I don't know that I have these mocked up. We just built it. Yeah, let's just go back to that. It would just pop open like a little damn it at the bottom of the screen. And it's like your post has been posted here, like, and that with like a, you know, you could grab the link or something like that. But we had URLs too. So if you went back to the like main feed, it was there. You could pop it open, just grab the URL that way. So like that's how we handled it, but we didn't get too far into sharing these things
So,
around. Yeah.
John, you want something to like pop up on the screen that sort of prompts you to share? Is it sort of bringing the share to like the fore or something else?
I think that publish post button that Dave has in the thing would be the actual share action. Like I think
Yeah.
that's more. I mean, at some point maybe that pops open has more parameters in there, like where you get to choose who you're sharing it with and kind of like where exactly it goes. But for now, sharing just means post to the rest of the group. I think what I'm trying to get at is how does my browser's state map to getting to this post again? And can I like get other people's browsers to focus only on this post without like telling them to go to the stream, scroll down to my post, and then click on it? Like, is there a more direct way for them to see
Would
this again?
a URL mapping to the block not work there?
That's kind of what I'm getting. So I guess maybe like if it is that flow, like clicking post maybe just changes my URL to now go from like /draft to /block/x. And because this block is a post type block, the whole UI knows to render it as a post. And then anybody else who gets this URL as well also goes back to the state, which seems makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then like, because we're the post as view in this case is like over time these things can be sort of added upon, and like, you know, as the layers of metadata are showing up, then that link changes, I guess, to reflect the different states of that. Is that a way to think about that? Okay.
So.
Okay, that's interesting. 'Cause then you got like a historical thing going on there that you could have with URLs.
It's kind of an interesting question there too, because if should you see that version anytime that you hit that URL? And should that automatically tell you like, hey, there's actually 2 new versions of this. One of them's by John and another one's like a remix by Kristen or something,
Yep.
whatever. Should it be updating that original URL, or should that original URL now be smart enough to map the user to like, hey, there's new stuff that branched off from here, and maybe that's what you're looking for now?
This is built-in notification, damn it.
Because we're kind of following this philosophy of only edits, it does kind of feel to me like that post then gets memorialized. It's very much in the past. That was the state, because there is no way to edit the contents of that block. However, yes, our interface layer can be like, well, I've done some analysis on the chain. There seems to be things that have this block that I'm on as parent, so I'm going to present them as things to maybe go down and look at if you're interested. But otherwise, maybe there's also a slightly more expanded metadata field, or not more information, but just like, here was exactly when this was posted, and here's like the relative timestamp. So 6 days ago, and then this was 3 days ago and 1 day ago, and you can kind of instantly piece it where it is on like a time scale.
A weird little like history or like
and future as well.
History, future, like version control, but not
It's your little scrubby history thing where you can see the thing get built in. Weird.
It's like the life of the thought, and it can go any direction as far as time goes. Like there's history, there's future, there's
the future case is really interesting because you can like have people building towards a state. That's a game type that's interesting.
You could also see parallel versions of it later because someone else is like, oh, weird, I've had a similar thought, and then somehow those are like attached.
There's all sorts of like journalistic implications too, outside of what our primary use case is, but that's
totally
a really interesting thing to apply there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. So there's some implication in the. I'm gonna have to rewatch this to have this sit in, but in the way the navigation works there. So there's some layer to the act of hitting post or publish where it like pushes it into immutability or something. And then this is where I had this sort of save as draft as an alternate like place to put it, that it's not in the not on the chain, I guess. I don't know how to think about that yet, but there's some layer in there that we might want to play with. I don't know that we need to think about that now, but
definitely when I think about drafting, I almost imagine that anything that has not been hit as like post is a draft. Everything like personal, everything sort of that's not really on the chain is in eternal draft mode. That way nobody ever feels like they're losing work if they close the window or something. Like, just get rid of all of that like emotional fear.
So how does that, like, how do you imagine, I mean, we're gonna run into this when we start implementing it, but like every time you hit enter in this field, it's submitting it, like, and so you're building a post. Does it it's in draft mode at that point, and then until you explicitly hit post, this interface is weird. Like, when you'll see it once it gets built, like I have this thing hidden altogether until you start typing and create your first block, is how I work that out. Because then there's a secondary like, but
step.
So like then the draft concept kind of has to exist here if we're saving that state, I guess. Okay. Then it's whether or not we make that explicit, or because you can create a bunch of cruft, which is fine. That may just be part of the flow. Yeah, we'll just have to build this and see how but the draft thing is going to come up. So,
and whether or not it's synced, and if it's synced, is it encrypted? Just what are the implications there? As opposed to like maybe just putting it into the browser storage and not syncing it would be the other side of that axis.
Okay.
Or putting it on a chain that basically is tied only to your address and acts as some sort of private, immutable chain, but something that nobody else has access to, because anything that you do publish will be moved. Not moved. That's where it gets tricky, because it's immutable. You don't want to duplicate data. do you at that point like copy the data and essentially say, well, now it was moved out of draft mode? Do you keep a copy of the draft before you send it out onto the global chain? See lots of difference there.
Yeah, anything that uses your address and then puts it onto the chain could be found, just because of the way the blockchain stuff works. But the contents, the insides, you can encrypt it with the signature that is associated with your account that only you could generate if you have your login. So yeah, I think the redundancy might, with that execution, the redundancy would be a problem, but it would be a safe way of doing it because the original draft content would be guaranteed secure and only unlockable by the owner. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think we should bubble that one up again. It's hazy to me. So, okay, so we've got, still, it's back to the question of getting the URL for the thing. I think that pattern we'll have to see once we get it in the page. Like, my experience with that was never really settled on a perfect version of it because there were a bunch of different interfaces and you're hitting the thing in different ways. So yeah, like going and navigating to the thing and getting a URL or something like that, or if we need to expose something like, I don't know, like right click to get some version or something like this. I think that we see what we're spitting out and what we have, and then try to create some controls on top of that. I'm just turfing this stuff to get it in the page, I think, at this point, because I can abstract a billion things here. I don't know that it'll get us anywhere though. So, okay,
You
so
could just for like flow, like never mind. I don't think it's relevant here. I was just thinking, because the point is not that you know where the URL is, it's bubbling it up for other people, right?
Yeah. This particular case is that, like, I posted it, I want to share it in the state that I posted it, and then we ran into the idea that, well, there's a historical timeline of this thing that's connected to URLs. So there are implications for that I don't really get. But if we can get them in the page, I know that the case will work that if we have a post button and you go into that thing and it creates a post and you add some blocks and you hit post, it's going to then go to a stream that you will have access to. And, right now we know that it'll be there. And if you need to get a URL from it, you click it and it will route to a URL and you can copy it and paste it. That whole thing can probably be collapsed into some other flow when we know what that flow is.
There's probably the easiest thing that just popped into my head is like pinning something, but I don't know, where does that happen? Can you pin? Most chat apps for this reason, I guess.
Yeah, this is agreeing upon our mainstream, right? Versus whatever our model is going to be for this. Because the initial version of it is, if everybody's content is going to the mainstream, even like the small level consumables or something like this, like CJ hooks up his bot and like everything that he's reading goes into the mainstream, it's going to get real gnarly real quick. So we're going to have to work out something there. And it may be that gives us our first publish to a specific bucket, right, for this kind of thing, right? So or like all consumables or whatever that post type only show up in my area. Like I don't know the best way to run ourselves into that decision. Probably just to get everything into the mainstream at first. That's what I'm thinking. And then things like pinning, things like bubbling up, things like filtering, things like only showing X, all of these cases will start to appear, because ideally we can use that surface as a coordinating surface. And if that's the case, then like, what do we want to see there what do we want everybody to see when they land there? right? Like, and handshake on that, everybody sees it surface. And then like, how can your individual surfaces, work with the system? So that's where I feel that we're trying to grow to, and then trying to find a toehold to get in to have the basic block structures and stuff be postable to this thing. So yeah. I don't know that we. I think we've clarified some here. We're in and around the same place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our main blog thingy. That's where we're still building. Like, we need this guy. Just need to get that in the page and start getting the chunky bits of it built, and so having it spit out blocks and those blocks into posts. Yeah, I don't know. Where do we go from here?
Kind of goes back to how do we build?
Yeah,
where we started.
I think this is where CJ probably gets looped in. Yeah, like, so yeah, for what, like, maybe like on the, I don't know that you build in the back end structures or something like how does it connect up to the front end, right? Because like, like how does it like, do you spit out controls into surfaces with this methodology? Like, once you have the back end architecture worked out, and then just do you like tie it up to like just some standard UI stuff, and then like sort of block it into places? Like, how do you guys think about like sort of building UI? Or,
I mean, they could happen in parallel. The important thing is that we've cracked our initial schema. So that means the front end could be built based on just dummy data, as long as it conforms to that schema, and then the back end just needs to conform to the same schema, and then they should just be able to plug right into each other.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense.
And then Next.js makes the communication between those two things really easy, which is nice.
Cool. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's sort of figuring out who does what, I guess. Yeah, I'm curious, like, sort of the division of labor on sort of building the front end. Like, my like probably skill set where I'm not going to slow people down too much is if like, I can kind of think about how the front end is structured, but I don't know the best way to, like, to grow into that, if we're just going to rebuild it a bunch of times, or what to how to do that. I mean, I can obviously paint all of these things and get them on the page wherever they need to be with some, but I need help with any JavaScript that we're going to need to do to paint things into specific corners and like have bounding stuff and all that.
Would it make sense to think about within Figma pages and components, where like pages are the general kind of here's some navigation plans, layouts in general. Components would be the reusable, like the blocks, like the editor here.
Okay,
I like that.
Post previews, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can do a run through that and get it organized that way. It'll be good to sit with it that way. And then if I have any questions on what to componentize, yeah, I think that's good practice for me to sit with it and then sort of think about these things in components. And then there's usually an abstraction layer that I miss because I'm looking at just the visuals. So we can probably do another pass on that. Yeah, it may be good. So yeah, I don't know who best to talk to about like structuring these things. Like, would that CJ probably, is he going to spend most of the time hacking this stuff together, or like, how do you see you guys sort of fitting in here?
Is this part of what we use the general communications or chat channel for? So you could like pop out like, I need to talk about this, and someone's like, hey, I'm working on that.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I'm also feeling is one more chat, at least between myself and CJ, maybe Shahruz, maybe all of us, where we do land on, we try to get to a state where we have a Figma document here with pages and components, and as detailed a like specific backend componentry flowchart as possible that we can then like take sections of and just mark as like, this is what I'm going to go out and code up.
Got it.
And hopefully this is how it, like, these are the boundaries. And so we'll try to connect there. Maybe at some point this week we can make that call happen. And then in the meanwhile, we have our async chat. So anything that kind of feels like it modifies this plan would go into there and kind of feel it that way.
Cool.
I also just want to bring up, without a risk of steering, any blockchain IPFS stuff, like we don't have to necessarily put off. I'm happy to jump into that stuff, and I don't think it would slow us down necessarily.
Cool.
So just putting that out there.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think get CJ caught up. Like I can clean this stuff up, do another pass on it, and I mean we're pretty similar to where we were last time with like some new gadgets to play with, and yeah, like this. I think this query view thing we just got to build to see how it all shakes out. So okay, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean I got stuff to play with.
John, are you generally more front end, more back end, everywhere?
Back end DevOps is sort of where I feel most comfortable. Like I grasp React at a very like abstract level, but I haven't successfully like worked in a lot of good projects or projects where I understand what's going on. So I'm hoping I can sort of follow the layout that you and CJ put in place, and then I'll more or less like feel like I'll know what's going on. But I don't trust myself to like architect a React project for sure.
Got it.
Makes two of us. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think we just keep going like this. And then what's Kristen? So we're probably in and out of pocket for a few days here, at least, right?
Yeah, I think until Thursday.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we could meet Thursday.
I think we can try, and then
yeah, we can make time too. It just probably evening, like later Pacific, but we don't have to do it too late because I know John's going to be in Central Time Zone.
Yeah, I mean if it works,
Thursday or Friday.
Yep,
feel like good time to aim for. We can maybe get the calendar going by then, so we'll be able to move it around.
Cool.
As needed.
And we're doing Discord. I can do the calendar in the Discord. Cool.
Great.
Yeah, if we can.
I'm just thinking, I don't know if I've opened my own Discord. I've joined something.
First time for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just create some more mess on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Further and further into the murk.
Yeah.
I think like some of the mental models we've got going here are interesting. Like the promise of getting this thing dog fooding is very fun. Even though it's going to be frustrating. It's a fun frustration. So yeah, I think it's cool. I'm very interested to see how this like React stuff pulls together. Like, and trepidation. We'll see. All right. Cool.
Remember that too.
Yeah. If you're not scared.
What's the trepidation?
My last experience with the thing was just like so frustrating. Like it's fine. We'll be fine this time around.
Was it a React thing specifically?
Yeah, it's the first React thing I had made, and we just fucking swung for the fences, and we didn't know, we were learning it as we were going. So like we ran into every single stupid pattern, but I didn't know what to look for to fix the patterns. So yeah, and constructing its components and all that stuff, still a little shaky on it, but I think, you know, you guys will help with that a lot. So anyways, it'll be fun. Cool.
Cool.
All right. Till next time.
All right, later, y'all.
Arrivederci.
Bye.